So I just took more Dayquil and I'm ready to talk about episode 8. I'm sorry there is not a video, like a full-length video about episode 7, but I figure when I give like a summary video of how I feel about the overall season, I will talk about episode 7 and some likes and dislikes. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Melanie Tana. I talk about stories just of all kinds. Obviously, I'm going to talk a lot about books. I read a lot of books. And especially lately, I've talked about the Wheel of Time. This will be my sort of summary / review of episode 8 of season 2 of the Wheel of Time. That being said, I kind of have a cold and I'm just not feeling my best and I'm tired, so I'm gonna make it quick, but also some things make me excited and some things make me frustrated, and so we'll see how it goes. But episode 8, overall I liked it. I'm gonna say right off the bat, I do think that there is a bit of an issue with the season finales for the Wheel of Time. This one had a similar rush at the end that I thought was unnecessary. It had really good momentum, and then there was a bit of something lacking at the end that was an issue for me. We see a few dynamics with the White Cloaks, which was interesting. Trying to show that like they have belief in their actions. And I think that's true also for the Shan Chan. That's something that's very true in the Wheel of Time, is that most of the people who make decisions that seem bad or evil believe in their decisions, and they don't think that they're doing something evil or bad. They just think they're doing the tough, correct thing. I think especially with the Shan Chan. And we do see the Shan Chan, specifically Rena and Igain, Rena being Igain's soldam or slaver, just threatening her. There's a point where she threatens Igain to cut out her tongue if she misbehaves or is defiant, and Igain is defiant in this episode, and so Rena cuts off her hair. And that's like the first bit of defiance we see for this final battle. The opening of the episode did talk about Shamael and like sort of showcase the scene where Luz Theron seals Shamael away as a Forsaken. And there seems to be more of a relationship between them than I've personally seen in reading the books. I'm on book 13, and so I thought that was interesting, at least as far as I remember. I thought the dynamic between Lanfear and Shamael was interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about it. But there's definitely just truth to the fact that the Forsaken do not get along. They have their own goals and desires that often are in conflict with each other, despite the fact that they all technically serve the Dark One. This episode was really good for Matt, I think. I love any scene with Matt right now. This new actor is doing a wonderful job portraying our sweet, sweet Matt. After the previous episode where he drank the creepy tea that made him see bad things about himself, sorry, my cat's playing with a string. That's very cute. But anyway, Matt is feeling a little bit down about himself and a little bit concerned that he's a bad person, that he's going to hurt his friends. So Matt is approached by Padden Fane, who has the knife that Matt took from Shal Ghul, that kind of got into Matt's head and tempts him. And Padden Fane thinks that it will just take very little time for Matt to pick up the knife and be corrupted by it again. But Matt is very clever, and he instead finds a way to get the knife onto the floor and then wrap the knife in this like pole without touching it, and then using the knife to escape. And seeing Padden Fane's fear in that moment is very cool, because he's like a creepy dude and he doesn't get frightened very easily, and so for Matt to be clever in that way, which I'd say is pretty true for Matt. I like that for Matt, that he did something to escape and he was very proud of himself. And he goes to join in the fight because things are going down, you know? Moraine lets Lan back in with the Water Bond. It was a beautiful moment. They have this sort of, like, moment of understanding between each other that made me feel a lot better about the weird disagreement they've been having. I was kind of worried they were just going to be separate for, like, the rest of the show. But they need more time to work together before other events happen for me to really appreciate their on-screen relationship. And the Water Bond, with both the music and the visuals, was so beautiful and also portrayed very intimately. I mean, at the end, their noses are touching, they're touching faces, but it wasn't romantic. It was just like letting back in your person. And it was very powerful and very beautiful. We see Igain having been defiant with her hair chopped short, and like having your long braided hair is very important in the Two Rivers. In the books, Igain does keep her hair down, long and flowy, which is kind of seen as a rebellious thing by Nynaeve, who very classically has her long braid that she tugs on when she's stressed or nervous. But in this, it still shows the innocence being lost by Igain. And then when Igain is taken into battle and Rena is telling her to attack the White Cloaks, it becomes a big crazy battle with the Shan-Chan and the White Cloaks and just the civilians being in the battle in the middle of the city. Igain obeys and channels fire at people, and it's very disgusting because Rena calls her a good girl. And you just see that pet-like dynamic that the Shan-Chan think that they have with their Damani, and it's so icky, which is exactly how it's supposed to feel. And I loved that they managed to capture that, even though I didn't love the feeling. Rand has found out where Igain is being kept, and he's headed to save her. Lanfear took Moraine, Lan, and Rand into the way gate, and I'm not entirely sure how it worked that she opened a gate for Lan and Moraine to be sent through, and then also seemed to travel out of the ways with Rand. I don't fully know how it works in the books, so if any more major lore Magic System E fans can help me understand that and where that falls in believability from reading the books, I'd love to know. I don't super care as far as like where the characters end up, but how they got there. If that bothers you or if you have questions or concerns about it, I want to know what you guys think, because I thought that was interesting. Either way, Randa ends up in Falm, and he approaches the palace where the Shan-Chan are, and he massacres the Shan-Chan. What was he, like a what are they called? Some kind of High Lord person of the Shan-Chan. I remembered like earlier what he's called, but anyway, he doesn't even fight with his blade as he's challenged to. He just massacres them with the one power, and I'm not sure how I feel about his ability to do that. I wish it showed more of his swordplay, and we'll get to that soon. Lanfear does make a deal with Bael Doman about dumping the seals of Wow, I always struggle. Quendiar into the ocean instead of keeping them so that the Forsaken cannot be set free, I'm pretty sure is the goal. There is a argument between Surath and Ishamael. He tells her to be prepared to shield and to potentially gentle a man, and that man is Rand. There's a scene where Igain rebels against Rena, saying that she will not fight because she doesn't want to hurt the innocent people of Falm. So Rena basically is supposed to punish Igain for this. There is a moment where you think Igain might die because of this, but we'll get to that in a second. You do see Perrin and Matt meet up, which is very cute. Like, they're just so happy to see each other, and they fight together with the Aiel. It's very cool, and Matt helps them open the box that the horn of Valir is locked inside, and then he takes the horn, trying to get it to Rand in time for Rand to use it as they think he is supposed to. When Rena is about to punish Igain, there is something launched at the tower they're in, and then everything explodes. A bunch of the Soldam and Damani die, and then Igain is okay, but so is Rena, who gets up. But Igain has already found an unused collar. In a moment of cleverness, she manages to collar Rena before Rena can control her. And then there's this dynamic where I honestly thought that Igain was going to be not forgiving, but I thought she was going to spare Rena and get away. And instead, she first of all shows Rena that all Soldam can channel, and that's why they are connected. It's because they're linked. That's why the leashes even work in the first place. So all Soldam, all the slavers can channel, but the reason that they weren't found out as channelers because they're so weak in the power. And so all that Rena did was strengthen Igain in that way. And then when they're both collared, Igain is stronger. She hooks Rena by her collar onto a pillar with the one power. And like Rena almost did with Egwene, she leaves her there hanging, but instead of letting her down, instead of setting her free, she just watches her stop breathing. And it's very, very dark. And I don't blame her in the least. Like, she was enslaved, right? Like, she told Rena she'd kill her, which frankly, it's a Rick Grimes move, if I've ever heard of it. That's what my husband and I keep saying about Egwene. But it was very, very intense, very powerful for Egwene. And then she is successful and she is set free. This is where Rand finds Egwene, and when he goes to help her up, he is attacked by the force of a bunch of Damani who are shielding him, awaiting the command to potentially gentle him. So he's shielded, he cannot defend himself, and then Ishamael shows up. When we cut back to Perrin fighting, Perrin is about to be potentially killed by a white cloak when Hopper runs in and saves his life. But unfortunately, Hopper is attacked by another white cloak who gets him with an axe, and you see Hopper die and his spirit leave his body in a way. He was a good boy. Anyway, this makes Perrin very mad, and he attacks the white cloak who killed Hopper, and in turn pisses off another white cloak who's the son of white cloak named Bornald. How do you say his name? I forget their names. The White Cloaks, I forget their names pretty easily. And then it cuts to Matt, and in a moment of facing the Shan Chan, he decides to blow the horn of Valir instead of giving it to Rand, because he can't get to him in time. And he's flushed with all these memories. He says, I remember. And all the heroes of the horn approach behind him. What I didn't understand about this is I didn't feel like they really named the heroes enough. It's in the book, it's they're being recognized because the characters know these heroes of legend, but people who have not read the books don't. So even though I think the show needs to cater in a way to the book readers, I feel like the non-readers should be given at least some names to note of the heroes of the Horn who are basically revived for this moment of battle. I didn't fully understand it. What I thought was cool that they just kind of made up that isn't in the books, that Uno, who doesn't die in the Hunt for the Horn, it's kind of fun. He comes back as a hero of the Horn, and it's kind of a sweet moment, oh, what a hero, but he shows up and he helps save Perrin, and it was kind of random. But for those who don't know, you get to see Arthur Hawkwing and Brigitte. She's a very important archer in the Wheel of Time series, and but it was still cool to see the fight play out. It felt a little cheesy to me, but I feel like that's okay. That does blow the horn in the books, and that is true, and it does affect him. But I think it was cool because he's I'm a hero of the Horn, and he felt like he could actually help things. And then we get to see him fight with his spear, which is, I love the spear guys in books. We love Kaladin, we love Matt. But Matt, it was awesome. He there was some really cool fight choreography with him that I really liked, and I want to see more of that in future seasons. And Matt speaks the Old Tongue, which is also important because it's not like he really knows that kind of half-dead, unused language. He just uses it after blowing the horn, which makes sense. I liked part of the end with Rand. He faces Ishamael. The most powerful and the best part of this end fight is how defiant Rand is, in my opinion, how brave he is standing up to Ishamael. There's a part where he says, I will never serve him, referring to the Dark One. He says, in 1,000 lives, I never have, which is very accurate for Rand, that he's strong in the face of the dark, and he doesn't feel tempted to turn necessarily. His struggles are real, and they are up and down, but as far as his goodness, I think Rand wants to do good. I think that's just true about him, even though he's not sure how it will go down in the end or all the pain he might cause because of him being the dragon, but he definitely doesn't want to serve the Dark One. So I thought that Defiance was cool, but in a scene where Ishamael is facing Rand and Rand is shielded and he can't defend himself with power, Matt going to throw his spear at Ishamael accidentally stabs Rand with it, which is kind of the vision that Min saw, just not in full capacity. Ishamael disappears because he was just an illusion, tricking Matt into hurting Rand. And Rand has the cut from the knife from Shadar Logoth that is like a lot worse and a lot darker than most knife wounds. Matt feels instantly sorry. It's very devastating because he's trying to do good and he still gets tricked, which makes sense to me. I felt like he was going to be tricked into it. I didn't think he would actually hurt Rand, obviously. He's worried about his own goodness, but I'm not. I know Matt. But then in a moment where Ishamael might attack Matt and Rand, who can't really defend themselves, Egwene steps in. She's kind of woken up after being thrown back by Ishamael, and she defends the boys. She defends them for a long time against a Forsaken, which was a little surprising to me, but also she's a very powerful channeler, so I didn't totally hate that. It's not like I wanted her to be weak, but it just felt interesting for how long she managed to defend them. There's a scene where Lan and Moraine realize the people, Moraine recognizes that someone is shielding Rand from afar, she can tell, and so she goes to attack the ships, even though Lan mentions, like, you don't know that it's for sure them. She's like, I will kill innocent people in order to basically protect the Dragon Reborn and bring about this prophecy because it will save the world. So that is the mercilessness of Moraine there for you. For underwater little fire snakes, super awesome, super dope. Eventually the gang all comes together. Perrin steps in, Nynaeve and Elaine show up. Nynaeve had been previously dressed as a Soldam, and her fake Damani was killed. And then Nynaeve, feeling the pain in a sense of her Damani, and also just because Nynaeve has a hard time channeling, she's not able to heal Elaine's leg. What I didn't understand, so she gets so Elaine was shot with an arrow, whatever, like, sucks, but I'm like, hey, she's gonna get healed. She's at least going to get bandaged up. No, Nynaeve pushes the arrow through her leg, and then they just start walking. And, like, I understand that Elaine has a limp, and that makes sense. But why didn't they, like, tourniquet her leg or, like, wrap it? Or aren't you supposed to stop the bleeding? You're a wisdom, Nynaeve. Anyway, it felt like a thing where I am not an emergency medical professional. Like, I can't say for sure what you should do in that scenario. But I'm pretty sure you're supposed to stop the bleeding, and that's not what she did. I was confused by that. But they show up, and Nynaeve cannot channel without feeling strong emotion or rage, and, like, she feels, I think, a little bit defeated because of what happened to the fake Damani that she had trapped, and so she's unable to channel to heal Rand, but Elaine tries and kind of half heals him. He's not bleeding out anymore, but there's still some darkness left in that wound, and this allows him to sort of stand up and defend his friends, which I just loved. I think one of my favorite tropes, or one of my favorite popular scenes, is when, like, the gang from any story finally gathers together. It happens a lot in Stranger Things, and it actually doesn't happen a lot in the Wheel of Time books, in my experience. They are in separate places a lot of the time. And so this made me really happy to see everyone gathered together, very happy to see each other, to know that Rand is alive, which is amazing for them. And then for Rand to defend his friends and to defeat Ishamael. But this scene felt weird to me. My husband helped me remember what happens in the books and why we weren't too much of fans of the climax, because Rand does defeat Ishamael in book 2, who is calling himself Baalzamon. He defeats him with the Heronmark blade, but they are fighting in the sky. You see it in the clouds, and that didn't necessarily need to happen, but why didn't they fight more? Rand just approaches him. Ishamael just stands there, which is very weak of him and non-threatening, and Rand stabs him with the blade, and it's cool. He got the heron mark burned on his hand, which is real and true to the story. But then Ishamael just, like, dies and fades away, like, crumbles into ashes, basically. I didn't like that. I felt like Ishamael didn't put up enough of a fight that once Rand was able to fight, why didn't they have a fight scene between them? That doesn't make any sense to me. What I did like was Moraine creating the declaration of the Dragon Reborn, because Rand was like, I'm willing to do that. So it's like, even though he didn't directly declare it himself, Moraine doing that with the fire dragon was super sick. I thought that was very, very cool. But overall, I was like, why didn't he do that? And actually thinking about it, in the books, having talked about it with my husband, I'm remembering. There's a lot of talk of different types of sword forms, especially those who have heron-marked blades know these forms. And they talk in the books, like Lan teaches Rand a lot of forms, and they talk briefly in the show, but they don't really train together as intensely. There is a move called, like, it's to sheathe the sword or sheathing the sword, that basically you allow yourself to be injured in order to do the final blow against your enemy. And they didn't do that in the show, and that, once I realized that, I was disappointed, because that is how Rand tricks Ishamael in the book, and that's how he gets his, like, a wound. And I'm like, we'd better see something like that later. I want to see that come out later, because that was so cool, and I, like, loved the setup for that. It was like a Chekhov's gun kind of thing. You teach him that move, and then it's gonna happen. It makes sense, but I was like, why didn't it happen here? Why did Ishamael just stand there? That bothered me. If Ishamael had put up a little bit more of a fight, a bit of a duel there, I think it would have been better. But he didn't. So I'm surprised. Anyway, those are kind of my thoughts. The final scene shows Megiddian. Am I saying her name right? Anyway, that's... my brain's dead. Megiddian the Forsaken, having been set free by Ishamael, who didn't trust Lanfear, and then showing up to freak Lanfear out. She's got a certain vibe that I like a lot, and she scares Lanfear, which I think is a good way to show us, like, the threat to come in the future. And it makes sense for the future books with Megiddian. It's very important. So I liked that bit of the ending. I'm just hoping in the future we can see more dueling with Rand, and that they can work on their climaxes. That was just a tiny bit too rushed. It wouldn't have taken more than a few minutes of them dueling for me to feel more satisfied by the ending. So that's where I'm at. We'll talk more about the overall show maybe in another video, but I want to know your thoughts. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope that future seasons happen and that they are good. I'm happy that they're being created. I'm not super picky about certain things because I recognize this is a loose adaptation, a lot of inspiration, but I love the characters, and I think they're being, like, acted and performed very well, and also written a lot better this season, especially Rand. Let's give him more, though. Let's make him more than just brave. Let's give him some action, please. Please. Anyway, you guys are amazing. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you more in the future about stories and about the Wheel of Time. Bye.